Hello F1 fans, welcome back to the F1 Masters podcast brought to you by AUBG Daily. We are back after a lengthy summer break. It is myself, David, Vasco, and Harry, and today we'll be talking about really the whole season up until now. We've had a lot of races since our last episode, and I think that we should recap what has happened throughout the season. So, what do you guys think?
It's been a really interesting season so far. And let's not waste any more time and start from probably the most important topic of the season. Red Bull and Max Verstappen. Amazing season from them, really impressive. This car is amazingly fast. And Verstappen, he broke the unbreakable record of Sebastian Vettel for most consecutive wins. And also Red Bull are on the verge of winning both Constructors and Drivers' Championship with a lot of races left. So I think really impressive season, and particularly impressive from Max Verstappen. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. He has shown that he has the talent to win a driver's championship multiple times, not once, not twice, but now 3 times. And I think we have to discuss his teammate Sergio Perez because his season has been underwhelming. I expected more from him. He has shown that he does not have the qualifying pace that Red Bull were expecting from him.
Yeah, Sergio Perez, especially I'd say midpoint through the season, really couldn't get into Q3, which with a car that is, I would say, one of the greatest cars in history in Formula 1, to not be able to make it into Q3 is really laughable in a sense. And he has to do all of these comeback drives constantly, which means that he loses a lot of time for no real reason. And his season has been more than awful, I'd say, especially Japan was one of the worst performances I've seen from a driver in recent times, and he constantly loses about over half a second to Verstappen in every qualifying session, I would say. He's still second in the championship. I mean, that car, how could you not be second in the championship? But it's been more than underwhelming, and I hope someone else can take that Red Bull seat because it's really a waste to have Sergio Perez in that car at the moment.
Yeah, but do you remember that it looked completely different in the beginning of the season? Like, Sergio won 2 of the first 4 races and looked really competitive. Even we discussed it in the podcast that he's the only real threat to Verstappen. And after that, he just melted. He couldn't take it. Like, I don't know if there is a problem, if the environment in Red Bull is too toxic for him or something like that. But if you have that car, you shouldn't make qualifying sessions and races like that.
Yeah, just to add on your point, I think that there is a lot of pressure when you're driving for a team that is a championship contender. We see people crumble in these seats all the time. For example, Valtteri Bottas, even though he had pace in qualifying, he could never really match Lewis in the race, and once it mattered, he would crumble under the pressure. And this is one of the reasons why I admire what Nico Rosberg did against Lewis, because he managed to beat him, and it's not just because of the car, it's because he was focused throughout the entire season, didn't make many mistakes at all, and he put the challenge against Lewis. Whilst drivers like Sergio Perez, for example, he has not been used to driving quick cars throughout his career, so maybe it's a new experience for him, different environment, and he gets a different sense of what it's like to drive at the front, which is more pressure on the driver for sure.
Okay, and to wrap it up quickly, how would you rate Red Bull season so far out of 10, and both Perez and Verstappen season so far? Harry?
So Red Bull, I wouldn't give it a 10 because of Perez. I would say, when considering everything, I would say about 8 for Red Bull. For Verstappen, I would say 9.5, not to be a 10. And for Perez, I would give him a 4, I would say.
I would say 10 out of 10 actually, because I think they are so far ahead of everyone else. Like, the points, Red Bull have 623 points. Second place Mercedes have 305, which is less than half.
Yeah,
Huge lead.
Even Max has more points than Mercedes.
Yeah, I mean, Max...
I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah, it does. Max, I think it's one of the greatest individual seasons from a driver ever. I mean, 10 wins in a row. All of those races were flawless, not one mistake, and he just drives off into the distance. I've never seen Lewis Hamilton do that, or even Sebastian Vettel. He does it on another level, which I find find even more impressive. But Sergio Perez, not great, but Red Bull has such a good car that it doesn't really matter for them at the moment.
Yeah, I'd say 10 out of 10 season for Red Bull, and although Perez is not good enough, that didn't harm the team. So I think, yeah, 10 out of 10. For Verstappen, if I can say 11 out of 10, I would say really impressive. And for Perez, maybe 4 or 5 out of 10, really underwhelming. I think if he continues like that the next season, this is going to be his last season at Red Bull. Let's switch to Mercedes and thoughts about their season.
Well, Mercedes, I can say that they have been really consistent this season, even though their car has not been the best. But I mean, for example, Lewis Hamilton, I have to say that he has impressed me really this season because he has always extracted the most from this car, even though at some circuits it has been like probably the fourth fastest car out of all. And George Russell, I was expecting a bit more from him, to be honest. And he has even been overtaken by Lando Norris in the Drivers' Championship, which is problematic, I would say.
Yeah, to follow up on Lewis real quick, really proves just how good of a driver he is. I don't think I've really seen him make any mistake this whole season. He pretty much does what the car can maximize during a race. And this is why he is third in the championship, and I think will end the season comfortably third in the championship, because even if he's not consistently best of the rest, he always finds a way to sneak into the top 5 or grab a podium here and there. Moving on to George Russell, though, he had a great season last year, and I expected him to be not even on par with Lewis, but maybe a slightly lower level. But he's made some mistakes, such as Singapore, where he's chasing down the win and he crashes on the final lap. He also crashed out of the race in Canada due to another driver error, and he's only had one podium this whole season, which goes to show how underwhelming it's been for him. I mean, just not enough pace, really, and not enough consistency, and we've seen more driver errors from him this year than last year.
Mercedes, I have only one word for Lewis: consistency. Really top performances, and he showed us that he still has that special something in him. And about George, really underwhelming season. I really expected more from him, and what he has shown us at Williams, I really expected to be challenging Lewis Hamilton, and this season we see that he's not on the same level as him. But still, Mercedes, really steady performances during the season, and I think if they upgrade the car for the next season, they have that really good driver in Lewis who can fight for something more. But for now, I can say that consistency is the word that best describes Mercedes.
We can move on to Ferrari, since they're neck and neck in the Constructors' Championship at the moment. Only 20 points between the two teams. Ferrari have had some ups and downs throughout this season, but in recent times, they have been one of the better cars on the grid, second best at some tracks, maybe even first in tracks such as Singapore, for example. Sainz has had a great season. He has improved from last year, more consistent, better in qualifying, and more clinical in the races, which is something he lacked last year. Maybe there was more pressure since that Ferrari at that start of the season was a championship contender, whereas this season they started off kind of slow, but their development really picked up, and I'd say they have a better car than Mercedes at the moment. As for Charles Leclerc, he's not had as good of a season as prior years, but races like Azerbaijan and Austria showed that he still has a good amount of pace and has been consistent in terms of results. Last 3 races, he's finished 4th in all 3 of them, and there's only 15 points separating the two, so I'd say they've had a pretty balanced year.
Yeah, I have to agree, and also we have to consider that Charles had some retirements which harmed his points tally, so I think that Sainz and Leclerc, they're on a similar level this season, which may surprise some people because they expected Charles to be way better.
Yeah, maybe, but I think when we're talking about Ferrari, we should consider their pit stops and their strategy. Like, they're really harming this team, and I'm not sure if Sainz and Leclerc are really happy with what is happening in the team, because this is the F1 team with the greatest legacy in the sport, and right now they look like clowns during some races this season. So I'm not sure if they continue like that, if their drivers are not going to be fed up and just decide that they want a new challenge. So I think there is something like a big problem in Ferrari, and they should resolve that first and after that aim for bigger things.
Yeah, I'd say the clown show, as Ferrari have been known for the last few years. I don't think it's as bad this year as previous years, but strategy-wise, they've always been terrible. Carlos Sainz regularly picks his own strategy pretty much, and that's good for him that he knows what's right and what's wrong, and he takes things into his own hands, which I do respect, because Charles, he listens to the team no matter what, and in Singapore, it wasn't the best decision to have him lose time to Sainz, and then he went on to lose positions because of that pretty much. And I think they just need a new philosophy. They just do the same thing every race the same way. They should maybe try something different or see what the other teams are doing and cover them off. I mean, in Japan, Carlos Sainz got undercut for no reason and he lost the position to Hamilton. Like, these are small mistakes, but they can end up being pretty costly.
I would like to ask an important question, guys. It's regarding Constructors' Championship. Do you think that Ferrari are going to overtake Mercedes for second place?
I think Mercedes are going to take second place. They have that great consistency during the season, and I think in the rest of the races that would be the most important thing for them.
Well, I think Ferrari will beat them. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a Ferrari fanboy, but their car seems to have more pace than Mercedes at the moment. And Sainz and Leclerc, the last few races, they've been, I'd say, more consistent than Mercedes and have been reaching higher results. With 6 races to go, 20-point gap, when you have a better car, I think that is manageable to close down.
Yeah, it really depends on George Russell's performances, because he has been really silent during this whole season. If he wakes up for the last 6 races...
So you think he will?
No.
But you still have Mercedes in front.
Yeah, but you have to consider everything.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with Vasco, and not only because I'm a Mercedes fan, but still I remain optimistic that they will clinch that second place. And moving down the constructors, we have to talk about Aston Martin, which is also known as the Alonso Martin F1 team, because he is the man who has taken most of the points that they have in the constructors. I think that we have to just acknowledge how fast he has been this season, how good he has been.
Yeah. Really promising start of the season. Like, Aston Martin looked like the second fastest car at the beginning of the season, and Alonso podiums, even some fights that he had with the Red Bulls, and after that pace just simply disappeared. And in the past few races, we've seen more of Alonso, not like this great, really fast veteran, but like that crybaby Alonso at Ferrari and McLaren. So yeah, really promising beginning of the season, and right now with every race it is becoming progressively worse for Alonso and Aston Martin.
Yeah, I'd say this team has been pretty incompetent throughout the season. I think it proves that since they don't have experience fighting at the front, they've never been in these podium places regularly. In their history, even before Aston Martin, whether it was Racing Point or Force India, they were always a midfield team. And so now they made a car at the start of the season which was very good, but they didn't know how to develop it. Could that be because they were influenced by other teams and they didn't know their philosophy that well? Potentially. Also, they only have one driver, so that makes it hard to keep up in the constructors, which is why Mercedes and Ferrari breeze by them, and potentially McLaren could even pass them. Yeah, disappointing end to the season, and it seems like it's going worse and worse, but surprisingly, Fernando Alonso, the only driver this entire season to make it into Q3 every single session, and with a car that is, I would say, not even top 5 on the grid at the moment. That is more than impressive.
Yeah, I have really random but interesting question for you. What do you think was going to happen at Aston Martin if their second driver was Sebastian Vettel, for example, but not Lance Stroll?
They would be second in the constructors right now. I'd say Vettel's probably top 5 in the standings, similar to Alonso. Maybe slightly less because I rate Alonso a little more than Vettel, but they would have like 100 points on top.
Yeah, and I think he would have helped really with the development of that car, because Lance, he's not really helping with his driving, with the development development of the car and everything. So if they had two serious drivers in the beginning of the season, they could have been like really, really close to Red Bull.
Yeah, and Fernando also couldn't help develop the car that much because he's new at the team. It's his first season. He doesn't understand this car fully.
Yeah, I have to agree, and I have to mention that Lance Stroll, I mean, he has shown that he may even not be at F1 level in terms of performance. He has just had so many bad races this season with this car, especially at the start of the season. He got some points, but considering the performance of the car, it was not enough. And moving down, in 5th place at the moment, we have McLaren, even though I think they're going to jump to 4th place by the end of the season because their car at the moment is like 2nd or 3rd fastest on the grid, to be honest.
Yeah, this is the elephant in the room with McLaren. That game-changing moment of the season was that upgrade, because in the beginning of the season, their car looked really slow, and Piastri and Norris, they didn't look really comfortable there. But after that, in the past few races, after this upgrade, McLaren have really changed like the level they're performing on. So I think in the last 6 races of the season, some really good results are going to take place for them. And yeah, I think really positive end to an alright season for McLaren.
Yeah, I'd say this is the best I've seen a McLaren in terms of pace since the start of the hybrid era, maybe.
I don't think so.
Maybe
because
2021.
yeah, the last season of Sainz and Norris was really good for them. Both of them were really strong. Like right now, Piastri and Norris are looking the same way. And even I can make this parallel. Like Norris right now is in the role of Sainz, and he's that teacher for a rookie like Piastri. I think they have really good tempo, and if they can keep that for the next season and develop really well, I really want to see like a great competitive McLaren and not the meme team in the beginning of the season again.
Yeah, I mean, in Singapore especially, we see the Ferrari and the McLaren fighting for the win, which is something that F1 fans have missed for a long time, and it was such a pleasant sight. And McLaren are one of those iconic teams in Formula One, and it's always nice to see them at the front. And I think Lando Norris is really a generational talent. I mean, he is proving how good he is every single race. He has more podiums than both Ferrari drivers and George Russell in a car that couldn't make it out of Q1 at the start of the season. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, but I would also like to comment on Oscar Piastri because I think that he has proven that he's also a great talent. As in the last few races, he has been close to Lando's tempo, which is quite impressive for a rookie. So I think that McLaren really did a good job to get him out of Alpine, and we all know what happened with the contract saga and stuff last season.
Great pace from him. I think he's the best rookie this season by a mile.
There's no competition really, but yeah.
And we'll see what is going to happen the next season. McLaren, if they have really fast car, it's going to be great for both us fans and for the sport. So we can only hope. Let's jump to Alpine. Nothing interesting about Alpine this season.
I think you're forgetting something. It was the thing that Otmar Schaffnauer left the team, and there was like quite a big uncertainty at that time. I think it was around the Belgium Grand Prix, and a lot was spoken about that in the media.
Yes, Alpine, I think they fired like their whole directing staff halfway through the season, Otmar Schaffnauer included. This team is so mediocre. It's so plain. They always have these ambitions to fight at the front, and then they just can't seem to make a car. And Aston Martin had a car at the start of the season that could fight for podiums, and McLaren had a car at the end of the season to fight for podiums. Where's Alpine's development? I mean, they do have 2 podiums somehow. I don't even know how they have 2 podiums, but they're just in no man's land. They're miles clear of the 4 bottom teams, but miles behind the top 5 teams. And it seems like they can't develop the car. Every year, it's the same pace from Alpine. They don't go up, they don't go down. It's just a car that could finish P8 or 9 on an average day.
Yeah, as you said about the ambitious plans, I now remember how Cyril Abiteboul said, we have a 5-year plan and in 5 years we'll be world champions. Well, we can see that it's never happened.
What is this 5-year plan? They can't even break into the top half of the standings right now. And they have 2 pretty decent drivers. I'd say they have a strong teammate pairing, although there is friction between them. but I need to see more from this team. What they're doing this season is not enough, and I don't expect them to improve though because of just how strong the top 5 teams are, and also Alpine have a pretty bad engine, so that's a big factor.
Yeah, only I want to say shout out to Pierre Gasly because during the season he was really consistent. He had 2 podium places, and also this is his only one, okay, but he had only 1 podium place, but he has 8-point lead to Esteban Ocon so far, and also Ocon should have been that team leader, but it turned out that Gasly may be the better pilot. So if they have more competitive car, I think Gasly is going to take charge at that team, like the lead pilot.
Yeah, even though I personally prefer Gasly to Ocon. Ocon has had 5 retirements compared to Gasly's 1, so that could be a pretty big factor in the points total. I mean, we saw in Singapore, he was having a great race. He was going to finish a solid P6, and the car just gave up on him.
Yeah, and I also think we have to consider that Ocon got a podium in Monaco, which is quite hard to achieve. He made an awesome qualifying, and this was probably his highlight of the season because this was a really strong performance.
Yeah, the couple of pilots is really steady, but Alpine really need to step up their game because, as David said, this car is mediocre at best right now.
Yeah, and going down the order, we have Williams in 7th place. It's not a familiar sight in the last few seasons. They've actually had a step forward.
Yeah, but again, nothing really interesting at that bottom 4 teams. Like Alex Albon had some really impressive performances during the season, and also Logan Sargent below average performances for him. His greatest finish was 11th place, which is not good enough. And I think Williams, they have better car than previous years, but at that point of time, they need not only one driver, because Albon has taken all the points that Williams have collected during this season. I think they need 2 strong pilots, and they need a clear vision for the future. And I think there may be something good at Williams.
Yeah, I mean, they brought in James Vowles, who has proven to have been an upgrade for them, especially in terms of the car's performance. Alex Albon, he's doing the best he can, really. I don't expect anything more from him. He's had some great results. 7th at Monza and at Canada. Also 2 8th place finishes. 21 points is pretty good in that Williams, considering how big the gap is to the top teams, and they usually lock out the points every race. So it's impressive that he's broken into the points a good chunk of times. Unfortunately, Logan Sargent, I wouldn't just say he's below average. I think he is awful. Crashes once every 2 races, I feel like. Yeah. Maybe even more often.
Really costly crashes for Williams too.
Yeah, absolutely. Money-wise, I mean, this is one of the worst teams on the grid. Logan Sargent has shown glimpses. I mean, first race of the season, I thought he showed some potential. I mean, as a first race in F1, he finished 12th. And since then, he's only beaten that result once. And like, where's the development of the driver? It seems like he's been going backwards, and it's reminding me more of the Nicholas Latifis of the world or the Nikita Mazepins of the world. He is clearly not cut out for F1, and I think Williams should look for someone else, maybe a Liam Lawson, maybe someone else from the F2 grid. But for now, this driver pairing will not be enough for them if they want to make a bigger step in the future.
Yeah, I have recently read some rumors that Felipe Drugovich may be replacing Logan Sargent, which may actually be a good option for Williams, considering that he potentially is going to perform better than Logan. He hasn't had a history of crashes in previous seasons. I'm not sure how he'll perform in F1, but I believe that this may be a breath of fresh air, and they have to try something new, I believe, because Logan has proved he is not F1 material.
Yeah, for sure. The future for Williams will be really interesting. We'll see what is going to happen. For sure, Alex Albon will be their lead pilot next season, but we'll see who the second pilot is going to be. But let's combine 8th and 9th place, because Haas and Alfa Romeo, they've had really boring seasons so far, and I don't think they've shown us glimpses that they can be something more than these bottom teams right now.
Yeah, it's a shame for Haas especially. I mean, I personally like that team a lot, and they sacrificed their whole 2021 season to develop the new gen gen cars. And has it paid off? No, because they're still at the back of the grid. And they have a car that is great in qualifying, but doesn't do anything in the races. They constantly fall off. I mean, Nico Hülkenberg has probably been in Q3 more times than Sergio Perez, and he's only had 1 points finish this whole season. They have no tire degradation. They have a horrible race pace. I feel like every time I see a Haas starting in 5th or 6th place, which has happened a few times this season, they just plummet down the order throughout the race, and it's unexplainable. But overall, nothing really to report on. Pretty boring season for them. No standout races. I mean, they've had a couple points finishes, but nothing major, and just really an anonymous season for them.
Yeah, I think the same goes for Alfa Romeo, which are even more boring for me than Haas. Like Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu, they haven't shown us glimpses of anything interesting so far this season. And yeah, Valtteri has 6 points, Guanyu Zhou, he has 4 points, and this is the highlight of their season. Like, if right now I tell you what was the best moment of Guanyu Zhou or Valtteri Bottas on grid this season, and you'll be like, who are these guys?
Yeah, but still, both teams have retained their drivers for next year. They've chosen the safe option.
I don't think the problem is the drivers. Their car is so mediocre that even if they have Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen at that Alfa Romeo, they're not going to be better than 6th or 7th.
Yeah, I have to agree. And we have to finish off by covering AlphaTauri. And there's a lot going on in this team.
At the beginning of the season, I had really high expectations about Nick De Vries. Everything went down from that point. Nick De Vries was probably the worst pilot on the whole grid, even below Logan Sargent. AlphaTauri, they have really poor car. That team, there is a huge problem there, I think, with the car and the environment in the team. I'm not sure what the future holds for them. I think they confirmed that Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda will be their pilots, which is like an alright lineup. But yeah, if their car is the worst on the grid like this season, I'm not sure what is the point of that team anymore. Like, are they the second fiddle to Red Bull, or they're trying to develop their pilots there, but what are they developing in Daniel Ricciardo? I think the whole aim, the goal of that team has erased a bit, and right now they've lost their aim.
Yeah, I think they completely abandoned this team since Max Verstappen joined F1. You see Carlos Sainz leave that Toro Rosso seat and go on to establish a pretty good career of his own, and he now drives for Ferrari. Another driver that left them is Pierre Gasly, and he's doing okay. It's just that AlphaTauri was supposed to be a Red Bull Junior driver development team, and that's how it was until 2016, 2017, where this team, it started falling down the order, and gradually we've seen drivers that aren't even from the academy join this team, like Nick De Vries, for example. And to go on about Nick De Vries' performance, yes, it was bad, but that car, especially first half of the season, was the worst car on the grid. I don't think 10 races were enough to give Nick De Vries a proper rating if he deserved to stay in F1. I think it was a little premature, and this decision was based solely on a Daniel Ricciardo tire test for Red Bull, where he would have been on the front row of the grid with the lap he did, which in a Red Bull, of course. And so I think they jumped the gun.
I'll have to disagree here. I've said it before and I defend my words. I think that this was the right decision by AlphaTauri and that they had to give someone else a chance because Nick was not doing well enough. And I think this has proven to be true, even though Daniel injured himself and had to be replaced by Liam Lawson, who has actually taken points in this car, which is, one of the most spoken topics in recent weeks, I think.
Well, I'm still not sure that Daniel Ricciardo was the best choice, although I personally like him. I think Helmut Marko also likes him, but I'm not sure this is the best pilot for the future of AlphaTauri. I think Nick De Vries, when he joined the Red Bull family, he knew that if he's performing poorly after 10, 12 races, he's going to be out of the team and they're not going to think about it twice. Yeah, I think that was quite expected, but yeah, with these performances, I really wanted to see Liam Lawson be in that second AlphaTauri seat. Although I think if Williams look at him as a second pilot to Alex Albon, I think that can be really good for both Williams and Lawson. But yeah, we'll see.
Liam Lawson has been really good, better better than I thought he would be. He has been very consistent, very good in qualifying. I don't think I've seen him make a mistake at all. Not even like a lockup or anything. He has just been really solid for that AlphaTauri team and got them 2 points in Singapore. Knocked out Max Verstappen in Q2, which, I mean...
Quite impressive.
Quite impressive in the AlphaTauri to do that. The car's gotten better as the season's gone on. And I think he deserves to be in that seat over Daniel Ricciardo. Because Daniel Ricciardo, what is the point of him wasting the seat? He is over 30 years old. He is not going to get any better. In fact, does anyone not remember what happened last year? This was one of the worst performing drivers on the grid. There's no reason to pick a driver just for marketing purposes. What's the point? That doesn't get you points. The driver performance, that's what gives you points. And Liam Lawson, not only is he performing better than what Daniel Ricciardo did, but also he's 21 years old. He's the future of not only AlphaTauri, but potentially even Red Bull. This is a guy you should invest in. Don't invest in a man that's past his prime and barely clinging on to an F1 seat. I mean, Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson would have been the perfect lineup for AlphaTauri.
Yeah, but I've already told you, we know that Daniel is one of the favorite drivers from the Red Bull Academy to Helmut Marko, and he's probably the most powerful person at Red Bull right now, so that may be the reason. And another reason, as I already told you, I think AlphaTauri, they've lost their aim, their goal for the team, and right now they really don't know what they're doing and what do they really want to do.
Yeah, I mean, what is the point of this team? Yuki Tsunoda has been in F1 for 3 years now, and he's gonna drive a 4th year in a row in an AlphaTauri. What is his goal in his career? Does he want to drive for AlphaTauri for the rest of his career? Because I don't think he'll ever get into a Red Bull seat, because he's an okay driver, but he's not good enough to be in a top team. I think they should constantly mix up the drivers in this team, because there's no point in just wasting 2 seats for drivers that are just placeholders and have no future in Formula 1.
Yeah, but right now I don't think the Red Bull Academy is that impressive, so they don't really have any other choice. Yuki Tsunoda is like the perfect mid-tier driver for them. Yeah, but we lost a bit of our point here. So let's wrap it up. What can you say about the season in a few words? And what is your most disappointing thing for this season and most impressive thing? Like driver or team?
Most impressive. There have been a few drivers that have impressed me this season, but I would say what Fernando Alonso did at the start of the season, it was really something unimaginable to see an Aston Martin be a regular contender on the podium and to be so close to that race win. It was a shame, but I think he proves every time he gets into a car that he is one of the greatest drivers of all time. He deserves more success than what he's gotten, and if it wasn't for him, this Aston Martin team would probably be 6th in the constructors, close to Williams, honestly. I mean, below Alpine for sure if it wasn't for Fernando Alonso. So I think he deserves a shout out regardless of how poor the car's development has been. He still continues to impress.
Okay, I can say for me, it's for sure Red Bull and Max Verstappen. Like these consecutive wins, nobody at the beginning of the season thought that this Sebastian Vettel record can be broken, and Max broke it, and it looked easy for him. Every race, when you know that Verstappen is on pole position, you know that you don't have any chance.
There was not one close battle in any of those races. He dominated.
That is really impressive. The car, that combination of the car and the driver, like they're in perfect harmony. And I think this is the most impressive thing during the whole season. And probably the most disappointing thing for me is again at Red Bull, and this is Sergio Perez, because if Sergio Perez stepped up and showed us the same thing like in the beginning of the season with these 2 wins out of 4 races, we could have had this title battle, like the same between Rosberg and Hamilton. And right now, we just looked at one really calm season at the top. Like Max took the lead from the first race, and for the whole season, nobody was even close to him. So yeah, I think Sergio Perez could have done really, really better this season.
Would you say he's your biggest disappointment of the season?
Yeah, he's my biggest disappointment of the season. Maybe him and Nick De Vries, because I expected much more. But yeah, at least Sergio had the car.
So I was really impressed by McLaren's comeback, to be honest. I didn't expect them. In my predictions for this season, I had wrote that they would finish 8th in the constructors, which was really poor on my side. side, and now they're gonna probably clinch the fourth place. Also, I'd like to mention Lewis Hamilton's consistency, as I was really impressed, even though he has shown us he can perform at a high level. And the big disappointment for me is Logan Sargent, because I was expecting him to be probably the best rookie this season, even better than Oscar Piastri. And David, what is your biggest disappointment?
My biggest disappointment, there's a few candidates. I will say Logan Sargent. And Logan Sargent, it's not been a good season at all. I mean, yes, he's a rookie. Yes, he's driving for Williams. But how can you not get any points this entire season when Alex Albon has 21? And there's been no development. But I didn't really have high hopes for him to begin with. But it just seems like he's been going backwards even more. And I just hope that Williams can find a better driver, really.
I think that's all. We wrapped up the season so far. We've had an interesting season. I think we covered all the top teams and all the teams at the bottom. And we'll wait for the last 6 races. It is going to be interesting. I don't think there is like a drama for what is going to happen. Maybe the most interesting thing is what team is going to take second place. But yeah, we're going to enjoy the last 6 races and look forward for the new season.
Yeah, this is all from us today. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow us in AUBG Daily on Instagram and Facebook. And stay tuned for more of our content. Thank you, guys.